Good morning to all of you. Welcome to the BIF event today for release of the study report on India's mobile manufacturing ecosystem, challenges and opportunities. We are extremely privileged and honored to have with us Secretary MeitY, Shri S. Krishnan, with us as the chief guest of for the event this morning. Warm round of applause, please. Also, we would have a number of other dignitaries who I'll be calling upon on the dais one by one. To begin with, sir, I would request Mr. Krishnan first to please take this dais, please. So, morning and welcome, sir. I think it's here. Next, I would like to call upon on the dais is our chair of the BIF devices ecosystem, Mr. Ricardo Tavares from Google. Over to you, Mr. Ricardo. Please, morning and welcome. I would now like to call upon Dr. Harshvardhana Singh, Chairman Ikidwaj Advisors LLP. Morning and welcome, sir. Next, I'd like to call upon on the dais is Mr. Dr. Naveen Bali and Mr. Dhruv Shekhar from Cohen Advisory. Please. I'd now like to call upon our president of BIF, Mr. T.V. Ramachandran, on the dais. The quorum would be complete once I invite Mr. Brigadier Anil Tandon, our Director General. Morning and welcome, sir. Thank you all, distinguished gentlemen on the dais. We begin the program by having the welcome address and context setting, which will be done by our president, Mr. T.V. Ramachandran. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Debashish. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's indeed a great pleasure extending a warm welcome to all of you at this occasion to mark the release of the BIF's research-based report on devices ecosystem, challenges and opportunities. This report, commissioned by BIF, has been prepared by Cohen Advisory, a well-known, reputed technology policy research firm, come think tank based in Delhi. And this has been also in active interaction with one of our most vibrant committees in BIF. In BIF, we have about 15 to 16 specialist committees focused on different verticals of specialization. And this happens to be one of the most active, vibrant. Convener is Debashish, who is the moderator for the proceedings today. He is a very active convener. Chairman is Mr. Ricardo Tavares. And we will have others coming in right now. It is my pleasure and honor to commence these proceedings by extending first a very special welcome to our distinguished guests on the dais. Firstly, I greet and welcome our respected chief guest, Shri S. Krishnan, Secretary MeitY, who we all know has an extremely busy, hectic time schedule. He has he's been involved in so many important happenings in the environment, as you all know, and he is actually rushed from another site to here to be in time with us. Thank you very much, sir. We can't thank you enough for this, for squeezing out time from your schedule to be with us on this momentous occasion. Next, I greet and warmly welcome Dr. Harshvardhan Singh, a very renowned economist who is a distinguished scholar in his own rights, and having worked with TRAI, where I had the opportunity to be associated with him, working as his admirer and his disciple for many years in TRAI, when TRAI was first set up, when Dr. Justice Sodhi was the chairman, the first chairman, and Dr. Harshvardhan Singh came out with such brilliant papers, consultation papers at that time. I still carry with me, sir, as a textbook, your consultation paper on tariffs, the reforms which you brought in, your consultation paper on NLD, opening up of long distance. I think really historic things he has initiated in his time, and we are very happy, privileged to have you, sir, with us, and we look forward to your kind address. We also have with us on the dais Mr. Ricardo Tavares, Chair of BIF Devices Ecosystem Committee, who is also Senior Corporate Affairs Manager, Government Affairs and Public Policy in Google, based in New York, USA. Thank you, Mr. Ricardo, for taking time out to travel all the way and come be here with us for this release. Co-chair, Shri Rajiv Agarwal, Vice President and Head of Public Policy, Samsung, was to be here today. He conveyed his sincere apologies. He's extremely busy, engaged in some unexpected engagement which has cropped up. So he conveyed his best wishes and regards to the group. He's been an active participant in the work done in this paper. Other distinguished delegates from government, from industry, academia, research institutions, friends from media, ladies and gentlemen, my real heartfelt thanks to each and every one of you for your kind and valued presence and participation in the release of this important paper. At BIF, we attach very great importance to this paper because of various things. For example, you all know that today, India is really actively on the trajectory for going up towards Viksit Bharat, a fully developed digital economy, a leading digital economy of the world. And one of the poster boys in this sector has been the mobile ecosystem sector, which is a poster boy in terms of manufacturing, in terms of what we have shown we can do in volumes, not only for the domestic, for export. I think it's made everybody very proud because everybody carries that to be connected. Of course, before coming into the room, we were speculating on what is going to happen in the future. Sir Krishnan was speculating, the way technology is going, we don't know what play will be there on the devices, how it will be interacting with this connected system. Well, that may be so, but today's system is still there, and our remarkable ascent in the global mobile phone industry, manufacturing industry, marks a significant triumph, a strategic triumph in the economic landscape. I think this is, in that sense, rather a leader in what has been happening in the sector for India to come up in manufacturing. The Indian electronic system design and manufacturing ESDM sector is growing at a robust compound annual growth of CAGR, as economists would call it, of 13%, with domestic electronics in production doubling from $49 billion in 2017 to double that, $101 in calendar 2020. 23. In the year ended 23-24, I think it is about $115 and climbing, accelerating. About 50% of that, ladies and gentlemen, is coming from mobile phones. So all these are important together, the electronic components, mobile phones. I think it's a great sector to support and encourage. India has emerged as the second largest electronics market, trailing only behind China, with a market value today at $155 billion. But already people are talking of being well on course to 300 billion and then to 500 billion by 2030. So that much optimism and drive is there in this sector. This report, based on comprehensive empirical study by Cohen Advisory, outlines key recommendations and strategic initiatives in this to strengthen India's mobile manufacturing system and to capitalize on its recent achievements, to build further on it. Our aspirations are very high. We are not going to be content with what's happened so far. Our analysis shows that while increased production has necessitated higher imports, significant cost efficiencies are emerging at the component level, indicating that sector is on the right track. This is the way scale is built up. This is the way success is achieved in the sector, even elsewhere. We wish to take this opportunity to compliment and thank MeitY sir, your department, for the way in which you are leading this sector. It has been possible only because of that. This sector loves working with this and with the PLI, the incentives-led production policy which you brought out, PLI 1.0 and 2.0, to spur the growth of mobile devices manufacturing sector. Riding on the back of these forward-looking policies of the government, we are proud that India has climbed to become the second largest manufacturer of mobile devices in the world, thereby giving a boost to its Make in India and Atmanirbharta initiatives. Government and MeitY need to also be complemented for the new incentives-based policy to boost manufacturing of semiconductors, fabs, components for the electronics and mobile devices sector. You're all aware of the happening of the semiconductor even just a few days ago. And all these policies are going to be extremely facilitative for building the overall manufacturing system in a holistic manner and making India not just a manufacturer of devices, but also ensuring that we have a substantial component of local value addition. I am sure that these policy initiatives would not only help in bringing down the cost of devices and make our products globally competitive, but also such initiatives, like I said a little earlier, are aligned to our overall goals of achievement of Viksit Bharat 2047. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to assure you all, sir, that Broadband India Forum is fully and deeply committed to play a much deeper role in supporting and serving the government in enhancing the capacity building techniques, initiatives, and for building the narrative around newer and constructive government policies which will help accelerate our trajectory towards our goal of Viksit Bharat 2047. So we are at your service as Broadband India Forum. Please do tell us how we can serve you better, more efficiently, and more promptly. We'd be happy and privileged to do that. Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, sir, for being with us again. I now hand over the mic back to Debbie.
Thank you, TV sir, for the welcome address and context setting. Before we take this program forward, I would now again request Mr. TV Ramachandran, President BIF, to kindly warmly felicitate our chief guest, Secretary MeitY, with a flower bouquet first. Thank you, TV sir. The next, we would request Mr. Ramachandran to also warmly felicitate Dr. Harshvardhan Singh, Chairman Ikedaj Advisors LLP, with a flower bouquet, please. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. I now have the privilege and honor to invite our next speaker, which is Mr. Ricardo Tavares, Chairman of the BIF Devices Ecosystem. Before I invite him to the floor, I would like to give you, ladies and gentlemen, a short bio of Mr. Ricardo Tavares. Mr. Ricardo is a Senior Corporate Affairs Manager at Google Inc. and the Chair of the Broadband India Forum's Device Ecosystem Committee. He has over 20 years of experience in public policy for technology companies in electronics manufacturing, semiconductors, consumer electronics, and radio spectrum. I have known him since those days when he was in Inmarsat and looking at spectrum-related things as well. At Google, Ricardo builds key relationships with governments and the digital ecosystem and develops thought leadership on supply chains and semiconductor policy. With this short introduction, I invite Mr. Ricardo to kindly take the floor and give his industry address.
Thank you very much, Mr. Debashish. I think this year is my 20th year working in India, and I have proved that you can live in New York and work in Indian Standard Time. So, Dr. Honorable Shri S. Krishnan, Secretary of MeitY, Dr. Harsha Vardhana Singh, my dear friends T.V. Ramachandran, President, and Anil Tandon, Director General of the Broad India Forum, and through you, I also want to salute all the staff and members of BIF who worked to make this paper launch and event a reality. Esteemed Kulin Sanghvi, my co-chair in the Device Committee, and also absent Rajiv Agarwal, who is also my co-chair in the Device Committee. And also I want to salute Sharat Chander, who is representing Samsung in this meeting today. Ladies and gentlemen, I think Debashish has made my introduction. I'm feel very privileged to be here today in this moment in India's rise. Esteemed guests, government and industry leaders, and visionaries of India's technology future. It is with great pride and anticipation that we gather today to unveil this pivotal report that charts a course for India's ascent in the global smartphone manufacturing arena. The Enhancing India's Mobile Manufacturing Sector for Greater Global Value Chain Participation report is a culmination of rigorous research and insightful collaboration among key players in the ecosystem, illuminates the path towards India's transformation into a powerhouse of mobile innovation and electronics production. Again, it's a great privilege to be part of this moment in which India embarks on a journey towards industrialization and competitive insertion in global value chains. An India capable of revealing to the world its competitive strengths without fear. India's journey in mobile manufacturing has been nothing short of remarkable, and my colleague T.V. Ramachandran has pointed out the numbers of the extraordinary growth. As it happens, we can normalize it, but it's from the humbling beginnings that India started manufacturing with back and forth, forward and backward variations, get to this moment with 101 billion in the last fiscal year of manufacturing of all electronics, 50 billion in smartphones. We have to stop and think about this. 10 years ago, when TV, I, and others started talking about manufacturing in India, this was a dream that we felt would never come through, but it's here. Yet, our aspirations extend beyond the production figures. We envision India not just as an assembler, but as a creator, an innovator, and a leader in the global electronics value chain. This report that we're going to launch today delves deep into the intricacies of the mobile manufacturing ecosystem, dissecting challenges and spotlighting opportunities. It's a clarion call for strategic policy interventions that will propel us towards greater global competitiveness. And greater global competitiveness is essential for self-reliance. The report underscores the imperative of optimizing tariffs, fostering robust domestic supply chains, and nurturing a skilled workforce. It advocates for a simplified and rationalized import duty structure, an extended and expanded product-linked incentive PLI scheme, and a conducive ease of doing business environment. And in the process, in the last 12 months, from the first discussions we have between the stakeholders with BIF to today, I think one of the major striking points have been the importance of the incentives, which are essential for the rapid localization that we're witnessing, and also the ease of doing business requirement. To some extent, to a large extent, there is a need for a changing mindset to adapt to what we are beginning to see and how big it could become further down the road. The report, as I said, was elaborated with the last 12 months of discussions, and we're fortunate that the team, Dr. Bali and the team from Coan, came in to help us to systematize our conclusions. And with the leadership of Apple, Google, and Samsung, we were able to discuss also inclusively with the parts of the supply chain, academia, NGOs, about the view for the future. The report attempts to provide direct feedback from key actors in the ecosystem that can be helpful to policymakers working to design how to make India even stronger in manufacturing. And we have to think about that economic policy and development policy in India has been biased towards agriculture and services. A transition to grow industry is not an ordinary transition. I want to give a big thank you to my co-chairs again, Kulin and Rajiv, the BIF team, and to Coan, who produced this original research and systematized interviews with the industry. As we embark on this transformative journey, achieving increasing production numbers is of essence. But let us remember that the true measure of our success lies in the lives we touch, the dreams we empower, and the future we build. The report is not just a document, it's a testament of our collective vision, a roadmap for our shared aspirations. Let us embrace its insights, implement its recommendations, and together, industry, government, civil society, script a saga of mobile manufacturing excellence that will resonate across the globe. In the future, I believe this moment in India will be recognized for being as important for the country's development as the 1991 reforms that began to liberalize the economy. The 10 years of the Making in India program have shown so far only the first signals of what we can accomplish. And they are very positive signals. And we to get here, we have to fight a lot of naysayers, but we did get here in spite of them. The best, however, lies in the future, and it's our duty to support this future to come. Thank you very much, and I'll pass on for the next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Ricardo, for that excellent industry address. Moving on with the program, our next speaker was to be Mr. Rajiv Agarwal of Samsung, who's also the co-chair of the BIF Devices Ecosystem Committee. Unfortunately, he's held up today morning at an urgent meeting, which has suddenly cropped up. So he will unfortunately not be with us. So moving on with the program, I would now like to invite the Cohen advisory team who have prepared this study report on the mobile manufacturing ecosystem challenges and opportunities. The two persons who are instrumental in preparing this report are with us on the dais. We have with us Dr. Naveen Bali and Mr. Dhruv Shekhar. They will walk us through the highlights of the of this report, which has been prepared before this report gets officially released. I'll just before inviting them up on the dais, I'd like to introduce both of them to you. Dr. Naveen Bali is an economist with diverse experience in public policy. He was previously program lead for macro policy at the Council on Energy, Environment and Water. Before this, he has worked with the principal economic advisor in the Ministry of Finance. He has also headed the Center of Excellence for Sustainable Development in the Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs. Dr. Bali has a PhD in economics from IIT Kanpur. Then I have the privilege to introduce Mr. Dhruv Shekhar. Dhruv works on a range of policy issues related to information technology, hardware, technology, and trade. Prior to joining Cohen Advisory, he has worked at the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Common Cause, and as a consultant to independent directors of a leading non-bank financial company. He has also co-authored the third edition of Intellectual Property Law in India, published by Walter Kluwer. Correct? Thank you. So with this few words of introduction, I now invite first Dr. Bali and then maybe Dhruv to walk us through the presentation. This is the... Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. The title of my presentation today is Positioning India as a Mobile Manufacturing Hub. Hello. The uniqueness of this report lies in the fact that this includes both economics as well as legal analysis before we have put on the recommendations for the growing smartphone industry. This exercise is crucial given the new government's tenure and concurrent evaluation of the incentive regimes implemented thereof. The broad outlining of this report divides into two major categories. First is understanding the trends in the mobile phones manufacturing. And the second one is to understand how to enhance the domestic validation and localization. As already pointed out by the earlier speakers, India has now become a second largest electronic manufacturing hub with overall value of $155 billion. During the last decade, the domestic demand has surged by 3 times, whereas the domestic production has risen by about 16 times. India has now transitioned from a net importer to net exporter in the year 2019, with now 99% of the domestic demand being met locally. The export to import ratio has been rapidly increasing, especially in the last 5 years. India has been a primary assembler of the mobile phones, accordingly having the domestic valuation in the range of between 15 to 20%. However, this value addition at the lower spectrum of assemblies is not quite unique to India. Global experiences have also shown that all the countries that have entered the mobile chain manufacturing, they basically starts with a relatively lower value addition, but eventually starts climbing up the chain. A classic example is of China, where about 15 years back, the value addition was about 3.6%, and now after 15 years, it has gone up to 40%. Today, the non-localized components account for about 40% of the smartphone bill of materials. At present, our analysis shows that components such as PCBA, battery packs, vibrator motors, USB cables have almost got a higher localization, about over 80%. There are some components where the localization is still below 50. These were highlighted as display units. A few of them are display units, camera module, mechanics, die-cut parts. So, in order to enhance the value addition, it was thought of, the initial state policy was thought to be, to raise the tariffs. However, as you can see from this chart, that rising the tariff has no correlation with the enhancing of the localization, at least in the Indian context. So, in fact, what has happened with the sustainable high tariffs is that it has inflated the cost of the components that are being imported. As a result, the price of the mobile phones have also gone up, thus hampering the competitiveness of the industry as a whole. It has been seen in our analysis that India maintains around about a higher tariff rates of over 10% for at least about 35 components, whereas in case of countries like China, Vietnam, the topmost cap was at the 10%. Another interesting fact is that the machinery required for manufacturing of these mobile phones are also cutting edge. As per the industry experts, to avoid any technological obsolescence, these machines were required to be replaced every 12 to 36 months. It has been found that India also has an average 6% high tariff rates on the capital goods when compared with countries like China and Vietnam. Now, this gap is further enhanced when you look into the FTAs and bounded zones in Vietnam and China, where majority of your manufacturing has been done for the mobile phones. Such higher tariff rates on capital goods not only increase the prices of mobile phones, but they also incentivize postponing the purchase of the latest technology. And as a result, the delay in launching or manufacturing of the latest mobile phones is also there. The report also highlights that India follows a 7-tier tariff structure that is a little bit complex as compared to Chinese and Vietnam's, which is 3+1 tariff structures. All of these tariff-related issues basically comprise about a 7 to 9% rise in the manufacturing of mobile phones in India. Accordingly, our report suggests that we should rationalize our tariff rates. So in that, firstly, what we are saying is that we propose phasing in reduction of tariff for manufacturing of components to be more competitive, and to phase in the tariff for the capital goods as well to promote a faster technology transfer. Other than that, the report also suggests to further simplify the tax structure into 3 slabs of 0, 5, and 15 for the components. The report rightly highlights the contribution of PLI scheme in enhancing the manufacturing sector as a whole, and hence we recommend extension of the PLI scheme to the mobile phone for another 5 years, so as to continue with the momentum and focus on the scale of production. Is also a time that the PLI scheme should also be extended to the components, so as to compensate partly for the cost disability for the component ecosystem, and hence promote localization as a result of that. Another key point for the component extension of component can also be realized from the fact that most of these components are also common with other related electronic products such as tablets, mobiles, laptops. So PLI extension to these components will also enhance synergy effect and can boost the overall growth of the electronic sector as well. There are other aspects also factors that the report has highlighted that also leads to a rise in the cost disabilities. Few of them has been mentioned here. One of them is on the rationalizing the corporate tax. Despite the government efforts to bring down the corporate tax over the years, the effective corporate tax is still a little bit higher than the countries like US and China. What the report has highlighted is to extend the provisions such as the section 115 BAB which came in 2019 for specific for domestic companies that can pick up an option to have a 15% tax slab, but obviously giving up on their other exemptions. Those kind of things are only available for the companies which are incorporated on or after on and after October 2019. The report suggests that if this kind of provision can also be extended to the company which are incorporated before this time period, that could be one of the things. Other kind of corporate tax related incentives should also be explored for all the new manufacturers that are willing to set up in India or they are trying to shift from other countries such as China or Vietnam to India. The report also highlights the skill gaps issue, and we are recommending to deepen the mode for trade as defined under WTO agreement, to streamline visa processes for foreign professionals and further liberalizing relevant entry provisions to cover suppliers to entities participating in PLI scheme. So this has to be not only for the PLI scheme but further to the suppliers of them. Reducing these kind of additional cost disabilities which are pertaining to few of them like I shared with you, like corporate tax, rationalization, logistic cost, power cost, infrastructure, all these things and skill gap can further reduce the cost of manufacturing by 4 to 5%. May I now introduce request my colleague Mr. Dhruv to please come and discuss his part of EODB recommendation framed on via legal policy lens. Thank you.
Everyone. I'd like to begin the discussion on the ease of doing business section by reflecting on a statement from this year's economic survey, which is that the Indian state can free up its capacity and enhance its capability to focus on areas where it has to by letting go of its grip in areas where it does not have to. The licensing, inspection, and compliance requirements that all levels of the government continue to impose on business is an onerous burden. This statement encapsulates the kind of complex regulations that smartphone manufacturers face, affecting their scale and competitiveness. Now, as part of this section, we'll be focusing on about 15 points. However, in the interest of time, I'll be focusing on purely a select few, beginning with decriminalization of certain provisions in the Legal Metrology Act. This legislation sets the norms for product packaging and labeling, and these norms extend to maximum retail price, to color contrast, to its spacing of letters on packaging. In the event an entity contravenes these norms, Section 36 of the Act is applicable, which imposes criminal liability. Our recommendation is that, given the nature of this liability, there is a possibility of rent seeking on behalf of legal metrology inspectors. Thus, we recommend that this provision be decriminalized, and this is also in line with broader recommendations by the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, primarily because A, it flies in the face against global norms, and B, because of the fact it stands against established criminal law as well as strict liability jurisprudence. The other issue that I'll be dealing with is technology equipment and standards-related mandates. OEMs are increasingly being told to incorporate many technology equipments and standards, such as FM receivers and D2M capabilities, in their product offerings in India. Concerns to that are threefold. One, that any sort of incorporation of new technology and standards will result in new hardware additions being made. These hardware additions could be akin to, for instance, to enable D2M capabilities, smartphones will require an entirely new receiver chain, antennas, filters, amplifiers, while to ensure FM receiver capabilities are enabled, a new chipset will be required. The resultant impact of this will be that production costs will go up for the manufacturers, which in turn will have an impact on the cost of the consumer. The last point being that India has ambitions of being the leading smartphone export hub for the world. However, with mandates such as these, we're effectively demanding that smartphone manufacturers create one standard of smartphones for India and another for the world. This adds problems insofar as the internal synchronization of these companies, and thus we recommend that the government should steer clear of imposing any such mandates in smartphone industries. The next issue that I'll be dealing with concerns quality control orders. Now, the Bureau of Indian Standards publishes standards pertaining to various products and services. By and large, these standards are voluntary. However, on occasion, the government issues quality control orders for mandatory imposition, and this is largely done in cases of fairness of trade or national security. The element that we see happening with QCOs is that since 2020, DPIIT along with BIS has issued multiple QCOs, and there's largely a geopolitical element at play with respect to it, namely that India wants to reduce its import dependency from certain jurisdictions, and through that, and these QCOs are being introduced. Now, given the global nature of smartphone value chains, India receives, or manufacturing units in India receive various import components from different jurisdictions. By creating these barriers, there is disruption in the production supply chains of these companies, which adds to cost. And to this end, we recommend that the government should rationalize the timelines which are there for these QCO implementation, as well as the fact that inputs for products which are included as part of MATI's CRO scheme should be exempted from any QCO requirements. The other issue with respect to the QCO front is that BIS has also delayed in recent times certifications for foreign manufacturing units. Thus, we recommend that BIS should issue a timeline for when renewal or issuance of new licenses for manufacturing units will take place. Lastly, the next point will be on customs. As my colleague pointed out, customs classifications is an important element for manufacturers, primarily from the lens of bill of lading. Now, when importers and exporters are onshoring or offshoring a product, they're supposed to state the product and the tariff slab under which the particular product falls. In the event there is any mistakes which are made regarding that, products can be seized by customs officials as well as penalties be imposed on them. And in recent times, we've observed that certain products, at least the tariff classifications, have been changed without requisite industry consultations. To address this, we suggest that an interministerial panel be constituted, which can address all the industry concerns. And in addition to this, there have also been issues with respect to interpretation of customs by customs officials. So to give you an example, recently a resolved issue was with respect to smartphone display sets, which had various antenna receiver mesh attached to it. Customs officials were classifying it in an incorrect slab, and our solve for that is that CBISE should issue an SOP stating that while considering the tariff slab of a particular product, they should only focus on the essential character of it and not classify it in any other category. Finally, we have a suggestion with respect to the design of the PLI scheme. Now, the PLI scheme for large-scale electronics manufacturing was introduced in 2020 for a 5-year period. Seeing due to the advent of COVID-19 and the subsequent disruptions in supply chains, this timeline was increased by 1 year, and companies were given the option to choose any 5 consecutive years out of the total 6 years. However, certain companies which did start their production schedule in 2020 and missed out on targets in later years cannot avail incentives under the scheme. To address this, we recommend that the scheme be tweaked to state that instead of having the requirement of 5 consecutive years, it should be for any 5 out of the total 6 years. This will ensure that incentives are broadly utilized and the ecosystem grows as a net. Lastly, we have a few other issues which are addressed as part of this report. Some of them pertain to IMEI registration requirements for phones, others pertain to DOT certification requirements, and I request all the attendees to have a look at our report. On a final note, we'd like to leave with one institutional recommendation, which is that India has historically been effective in carrying out programs in mission mode, whether it's vaccination programs, space research programs, or more recently, digitization initiatives. Given the centrality of the smartphone ecosystem as part of our broader electronics manufacturing ambitions, we recommend that an interministerial committee be established, which will serve 2 purposes. One, that it will be a single window clearance mechanism for all clearances with respect to customs, with respect to taxes, and any other import-export issues. The second being that it will also ensure that India's linkages with other countries are more enmeshed and developed over time. With these kind of suggestions at play, we expect that India can become a leading center for smartphone manufacturing and continue to burnish its already existing reputation. I'd like to conclude by thanking all the attendees for hearing us patiently, and I hope you find our report interesting. Thank you all.
Thank you very much to Dr. Bali and Dhruv for the presentation on behalf of CONE on the key highlights of the report. Moving ahead with the program, I'd now like to invite Dr. Harshvardhana Singh, Chairman Ikidhwaj Advisors LLP, to give his enlightening talk about the state of the industry. But before I invite him on to the floor, I would like to introduce Dr. Harshvardhana Singh to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Harshvardhana Singh is the chairman of Ikidhwaj Advisors LLP, a boutique firm which works on industrial policy, trade policy, and regulatory policy. He's also a former Deputy Director General of World Trade Organization, WTO. Dr. Singh is a PhD in economics from Oxford University, UK. In 2019-20, Dr. Singh was a senior advisor on a project of the Enhanced Integrated Framework, WTO UNCTAD ITC, on developing a blueprint for e-commerce policy for Bhutan. At WTO, he chaired the work program on e-commerce from 2005 to 2013. In addition, as a part of his responsibilities as Deputy Director General at WTO, he oversaw the work of 3 large divisions, including the Trade in Service Division. In addition, Dr. Singh has worked on a number of larger initiatives on improving ease of doing business, including trade facilitation. Among his various current responsibilities, Dr. Singh is a member of the Committee on Digital Competition Law set up by the Government of India and member advisory council of the think tank Global Trade Observer, or GTO. From 1997 to 2005, Dr. Singh was part of the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, first 4 years as economic advisor to TRAI, and the next 4 years as secretary of TRAI. This work includes regulation relating to the pricing and efficiency of the infrastructure used by the telecom operators. With this, I hand over the floor to Dr. Harshvardhana Singh. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. My greetings to the Secretary, Mr. Krishnan, other distinguished members of the panel, guests. I thank Broadband India Forum and Cone Advisory Group for this opportunity, and I congratulate you for this very substantive report on India mobile manufacturing ecosystem. I received an advance copy which I read with great interest. So some of my comments relate to certain points in the report also. So I build upon the report in some sense. Before I do that, just a quick look at the transition of mobile phones, particularly exports. Mobile phone exports in 23-24 were the 4th largest exporting category at the tariff level. In 2017-18, they were the 206th rank. So in this duration, they have improved, and it's not a long time, they have improved by 202 ranks up. So that gives you the dynamism of this sector. The growth has been helped immensely by government policy reform. Multiple changes have been done, focus, and I also want to congratulate METI and all the senior officials there, in particular the work which you are carrying on right now, Mr. Krishnan. I will focus on certain priority areas. The PLI policy, which came in 2020, was a turning point. If you see the report and you see the chart on growth of exports, it's a turning point after PLI. So before that, exports had grown, but the growth level was very sharply increased subsequently. And in any case, we started being able to export from 2019. That's when our domestic production equaled domestic demand. So this policy, it has been pointed out, needs to continue. We'll see various thoughts underlying that. And one of them is the strong momentum it needs to continue. If the kind of support and momentum which was given through policy, that policy needs to be continued in the next vision period. Suppose our vision is till 2030, we need the industry to grow strongly because the potential is there. Now is the moment when it has taken off. Domestic content is a very important subject which the report takes up. So in that context, I want to look at one aspect which the report considers, which is net imports, and another which becomes evident from the excess of production over domestic demand. That gap gives rise to exports. So as far as individual component level net imports is concerned, even those countries which are considered success, you'll find that they'll be lacking in terms of positive performance. So if you look at individual components and parts, whether the exports from that country or that part is more than imports of that, you'll find Vietnam in a big way lacking, and to a significant extent China. So what we need to see is, how are we performing in the sector? If we are looking at net exports, net imports, because of this gap, now production is larger than domestic demand, and domestic demand is not increasing immensely. So the gap will continue to increase. And what you can see is, for the last 3 years or so, the extent of this gap is actually the extent of increase in or level of exports. For instance, in 21-22, the gap between production and domestic demand was in the years 6 billion, 10 billion, 15 billion. And exports were about 6 billion, 11 billion, 15.5 billion. Very close. So this, if it is maintained, the momentum of production, the net exports will remain positive. And it does not matter what is these incremental exports have as incorporation, the net exports will remain positive. And that is what will create the basis for a larger production ecosystem. So we need to keep on focusing on increasing the production. Higher the production, higher will be exports. Imports of components will increase, but in net terms, this incremental production will contribute to exports. So that's point number one. Second, we still cannot overlook domestic value addition, because that shows the strength and the composition of what we are capable of doing and how we are progressing as far as the manufacturing activity is concerned. So in this context, I have a nuance. Looking at domestic value addition in ratio terms, for an industry where technology is changing rapidly, and suppose you insist on a particular ratio in that situation, you will make that technology, the firm a prisoner of that technology. Because as technology changes, imports go up again. So you have to have a dynamic picture on value addition. Countries which have improved their value addition, including India, they have taken the path of aggregate domestic value addition increasing. So when scale increases, the country produces more in whatever is being produced. Ratio-wise, it might be the same. It will increase. It hasn't done so for India also. But once you increase the domestic contribution in that total production, and the total production rises, it creates an ecosystem which then helps you increase the ratio. That is the way countries have gone up. So focusing on ratios in a short term actually is self-defeating. In this context, we also need to see what will build the ecosystem, because as you see, the title of this report has ecosystem in it. The ecosystem gets built when there are different tiers of suppliers to the producer of mobile phone. Those suppliers come and produce in the country either when you have a policy of co-location of these suppliers to begin with, or when you have enough scale, enough skills, and these skills are brought by those who are attracted by the scale. If you don't have a scale which is large enough, the investment by the producer of part and component will not make sense. They will not come however much you want them to come, except to produce a bit here and then think of their global markets. But they are already serving global markets from another place where the incentive system is also good. So scale in India is very important. That builds the 3 tiers of suppliers. That builds the ecosystem. Again, we come back to scale. Again, we come back to aggregate domestic value addition, leading to ratio increasing over time. And in India too, there was a report by ICA on RoDTEP, which gives a table on local content of different components, which are mentioned in this report also. And I compliment the authors actually for giving the numbers they have given. But if you see, the RoDTEP report gives the local content for the period 2016-2019 for different components. PCBA, the ratio of domestic value addition was 9% in 2018. It is 96% today. Vibration motors was 0% in 2019. It is 80% today. Camera modules was 2% in 2018. It is 25% today. Mechanics was 2% in 2017. It is 25% today. So if you take a time profile, we are doing reasonably okay. Some would say even well. And increasing domestic value addition ratio takes time. If you see the snapshot today, yes, we are not where we would like to be. But we have done quite well if you take the snapshot of 2018-19. And this needs to be sustained over time with the policy support which has allowed us, enabled us to come here. And PLI is a very big part of that. And actually, if you really see large, PLI has led to the large-scale production. Output rose 70% between 2020-21 to 23-24, while the domestic demand increased only 24%. So this was possible because the competitiveness of production, due to the incentive policy, enabled them to compete in the world economy. Today, because the production is larger than domestic demand, growth will come from the world economy, from our exports, not from our domestic economy. Which means the exports need to sustain their competitiveness. All the things which the report has pointed out to reduce the disabilities are important. But at the same time, the whole raison d'etre, the reason why PLI was put in place was because policies had not or could not quickly come in to improve India's level of disability, in the sense reduce it. So it is an effort to help Indian producers compete in the world. And that is the growth stimulus which is now available for us. We won't grow through the domestic market. So this momentum must increase, and what a momentum. Exports have increased faster than production. Ratio of exports to production rose from 10% in 2020-21 to 30% in 23-24. In fact, it became 10, then 15, then 25, and then 30. This incredible performance of exports, and because now production and exports are almost going to be coterminous, this ratio will only keep increasing. And this is what, a period of 4 years, 3 years, 4 years? You've gone from 10% to 30% of the base of production, which is increasing. That momentum was due to the policy structure in which a key part was PLI. So, as far as I've also emphasized large-scale production. Scale requires not just conventional policy support, but some aspects of policy support which are specific to encourage scale. When you have scale, you have large investment. Large investment means the risks are, the investor is even more sensitive about risks. And risks are more when, say, policy is not stable, it's not predictable. So stability and predictability of the policy is crucial to give the confidence for investors to increase scale. Then, when you are producing, and electronics is intensive in terms of global value chains. When you have large value chains, any disruption, and this is a chain, so any disruption will have a disastrous impact on production and sale. So there has to be an anticipation of what will smoothen the effect of disruption. What Vietnam has done is that it has allowed a warehouse which can do business whichever way it wants, exports, domestic, as part of the tax-free system, because whenever there is a disruption in the supply of inputs, the warehouse provides the inputs very quickly to the investment zone, which is tax-free, and then the investors who have invested there and produced there, like Samsung, they sell it to 95% of production in Vietnam is exported. And therefore, there is no tax imposition, but whenever there is a disruption, there is an alternative source available. So we have to think of what to do if there is disruption. Third is that since exports is the key, any policy which raises costs of the product should be seen as something to avoid. Higher the tariffs on inputs, higher the cost of production. Fourth, whatever policy, a key lesson of industrial policy is whatever policy you put in, however good, implementation is never perfect. So monitoring and addressing whatever is wrong is very important. And that is even more important for large scale. What Vietnam has done is it has established an interministerial system. And actually for large investment, the Prime Minister of Vietnam meets these investors once a month to ask, is there any problem which you need to be addressed? So this kind of structure and policy support is very important if large-scale investment is to be promoted. and India also needs to go the same way. As far as tariff policy is concerned, actually, while tariffs are given the way they are given, and it was mentioned with Vietnam, the Vietnam tariffs which were mentioned were the MFN tariffs. Now, 80% of Vietnam's imports of inputs into a mobile come from free trade agreement countries. And therefore, you have to see a combination of MFN and FTA tariffs. And there, while the average tariff of Vietnam is about 5% MFN level, it's 0.7% when you take the FTA tariff level. And as far as China is concerned, while we are looking at 10% as maximum MFN, they have a bonded zone where most production of mobile phones which are exported takes place. And that bonded zone has 0 tariff on inputs. So we are competing with countries which have mechanisms to reduce the tariff, whatever their MFN. But we don't have that many FTAs. FTAs take time. So we have to act on our MFN tariffs. And our tariff levels, as the report has shown, are much higher than the competing countries. But when we are looking at or comparing tariffs, certain things are not kept in mind. One, if you are a country whose currency is depreciating, the impact of high tariff keeps getting higher and higher each year. Second, when tariffs come in, you end up with the cost of the price of domestically produced products going up. When that happens, and because we don't have 100% supply from domestic sources, which no country has, the foreign supplier also raises the price a bit. And when the price increases, that increase in cost is not given back to us through duty drawback. It's just a cost burden and lack of competitiveness. So when we look at this, we can see scale enhancing policies and tariffs are 2 important areas, plus the ease of doing business, which needs to be looked at. The government is very aware of these things, and I hope these thoughts and this report will contribute to further thinking about the relevant policies and continue the momentum, and I wish you all success. Thank you.
Insightful and detailed analysis of the global position on mobile manufacturing ecosystem. With this, we now come to the next part, ladies and gentlemen, of our program, which is the much awaited release of the report for which we have gathered here. So I would request all the persons on the dais to kindly stand up at their positions and open the ribbon, please. Starting with our chief guest, please, sir, and all of you. Yeah. I'd also like to invite Mr. Sharat Chandar up on the dais on behalf of Samsung to also open the report and release it. Kindly hold it up so that we can have a photograph. Thank you. With this, we come to the most coveted part of our program today, which is I have the honor and privilege to invite our chief guest for the event today, Shri S. Krishnan, Secretary MeitY, to deliver the keynote address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Mr. T.V. Ramachandran, President of Broadband India Forum, Mr. Ricardo Tavares, Chair of the BIF Devices Ecosystem Committee, Dr. Harshvardhan Singh, Chairman of Ekdwaj Advisors LLP, Dr. Naveen Bali and Mr. Dhruv Shekhar from Koan Advisory, Brigadier Anil Tandon, Director General of BIF, ladies and gentlemen. I think we are at an event which is being held in a very timely fashion, just as we are looking to fine-tune some of the policies and other actions in electronics manufacturing and more specifically mobile phone manufacturing. We have a report which the BIF has brought out here today, which will enable us to examine what the industry views as necessary and what the industry believes we need to carry forward. So in that sense, what you have tasked us to do is fairly timely, and I think it couldn't have come a moment too soon. All of you are aware of the numbers. You've seen the numbers. Overall, electronics today in India has increased to about $115 billion, the total manufacture in the country. This is about 9.52 lakh crores. And in electronics, the segment which has grown the fastest, as we are well aware, is mobile phones. It's almost about 45% of the sector. The overall manufacture of mobile phones is currently at about 4.2 lakh crores, or roughly about 52.5 billion US dollars. And that's why this is such a significant part of what the overall electronic sector in the country represents today. Various ways of looking at it and how rapidly it has grown. Dr. Harshvardhan Singh mentioned how it has grown from being the 207th item to the 4th item. If you look at the rate of growth, it's grown almost 22 times in the last decade or so. It has grown at a CAGR of almost 36% over 10 years. So whichever way you look at it, it's blistering. And it's made a big change. The real question, of course, is that, is this what technology holds? And is this all that, is there going to be a new breakthrough in technology? That's really for the technology companies to tell us in due course. And we'll probably know from them in terms of what are the products which will take center stage in the days to come. But today, mobiles continue to be a very important part of the way India communicates, the world communicates. So the impact of the use of electronics is not just confined to the total volume of the production and the impact that it has on the direct employment, but it's also the way it speeds up the entire economy. The digitization of the economy itself adds to growth. Many of us do remember the days from before mobile phones. One of the pieces of advice I remember when, given that the person has a link to the tech world today, one of the pieces of advice we were given as young trainees in the civil service almost 35 years ago when I joined, by none other than Mr. B.N. Yugandhar, who today is better known as the father of Satya Nadella. So was that, we were asking him saying, okay, if there are law and order issues in the district and we need to handle them, what is your advice on how to do it? So he says, the first thing to do is to cut your phone line. And those was the days before the mobile phones, saying that, you take a decision based on what you think is relevant. Today, of course, in the days of mobile phones, these are with you all the time, but it speeds up communication so much, it makes life so much easier, so many things where people had to actually travel and communicate messages. And people lower down the economic hierarchy getting to use them, it enhances their productivity so much that we've just taken it for granted. But that's the kind of change that it has made to India's economy, and therefore it's as much an enabler as much as something which is being produced on its own and contributing to growth. So in that context, I think it is important to focus on this segment. We are well aware that amongst the PLI schemes which the Government of India has launched, the most effective scheme or the most successful PLI scheme was the one which was launched for large-scale electronics manufacture, which targeted mobile phones and its ecosystem. The evidence of that success is apparent from all the numbers that we've spoken about. The other part of it is that for a number of reasons, we believe that we need to deepen that value chain in India. The statistics which were presented showed that 18 to 20% of value addition actually takes place in India today. In China, it's closer to 40%, probably a little higher than that. We realize that these are parts of a global value chain. The Niti Aayog report, which is also quoted, talks about global value chains and the importance of India's place in the global value chain. It impacts the way the industry unfolds. It impacts the kind of impact that industry has on local communities where it comes up. An interesting element of all this is that if you're looking at the electronics value chain, then the industry itself needs to be located pretty close to an airport rather than a seaport, because you need to be close for air freighting, not for sea freight. And at one end of the market, which actually deals with the assembly of these phones, you need, the employment potential is huge. So if only for that reason the industry has to be supported, it needs to be supported. Amongst all the other forms of manufacture, the largest factories in the country today are factories which manufacture mobile phones. They are the ones which employ 50,000, 60,000 people at one location. And that's the kind of employment we are trying to generate. This is something which we need to recognize and appreciate. Equally, it means amongst all the measures which have been outlined, the other thing also is conditions of work and for people to actually come and live there, close to it, and efforts have been taken in that direction as well. But in addition to that, looking at what could be done and what is being done, I think there were suggestions on what can be done on tariffs. I think the recent budgets have also shown that we are moving in that direction. This is not a sudden jerky movement, but a slow progression in terms of how the tariffs get adjusted. The highest level tariff was brought down, some of the tariffs were merged, some of the rationalization has taken place, more of it will happen. This can't be a sudden or jerky movement, but the direction is fairly clear. I think that is something which the budgets have established. Equally, if you look at the visa issue as well, we've, I think, to some extent addressed the visa issue. When Dr. Harshvardhan was speaking, he was talking about the extent to which value addition is taking place within the country and various components, the extent to which the manufacture is developing in the country. More of it would perhaps have happened had it not been for geopolitical factors and had it not been for certain other developments in the last 3 to 4 years. It might have been a faster rate, but I think the geopolitical factors cannot be ignored, and those are very, very significant in terms of how countries relate. But having said that, I think on the visa regime as well, we have established a more streamlined process which will enable where it is essential to focus on the kind of visas that need to be issued. We are in a position to issue them a little faster, a little quicker, and in a more streamlined manner. And it will also address all the companies which are engaged in production in the PLI sectors. So one of the recommendations that you've made, in a sense, has already been addressed, saying that you need to look at suppliers to PLI companies. And I think that part of it the government has already addressed, and which is why I'm saying that your report is timely. Had you been any later, then many more would have been addressed, and it would have. And but having said that, we also have a component ecosystem which the Minister for Electronics and Information Technology has spoken of, and it is something that we are working on, and that's precisely targeted at increasing the share of value addition. Because there is certainly a concern, because at 18 to 20% value addition which happens in the country, a lot of it is labor driven at the final stages of assembly. That is where the largest employment is. Now, if labor becomes cheaper somewhere else, and we are not, the labor wage arbitrage is not what it is today, it just could mean that the industry could shift to some other location as well. And if we want to be competitive, we have to establish that the competitiveness comes from the fact that a significantly larger part of the component ecosystem also develops in India, and we continue to be a competitive location where manufacture of the mobile phones can take place. And that is the context in which the goal is to try and increase the domestic value addition from about 18 to 20% to about 35 to 40%, to double it. We also recognize it's a global value chain, so therefore the question of trying to say that we'll make everything end to end is not really a sensible option, because we need to continue to be competitive and we need to have scale. So which means that even when we manufacture the components, we manufacture those components not just for use for the final product to be assembled in India, but for export as components themselves. So that is the other important corollary of this. And equally, I think it's important to understand that today, I think for the last 3 years, in terms of numbers, in terms of absolute volume, the total number of mobile phones being manufactured in this country has sort of stabilized at about 315 to 330 million. The total number of mobile phones in use in the country is about 1 billion, little short of 1 billion. And an average life, Indians tend to stretch the life, I guess, a little bit, so it's about 3 years. So which then means that we are more or less meeting our entire domestic market today. It's not likely to grow significantly larger than this, and we will probably be selling in a steady state maybe 330 to 350 million mobile phones a year in India, which then means that with the kind of production capacity we've already installed and what is getting added, if you do not export, then the industry doesn't survive or doesn't grow in the way that we intended to. So exports is something which has to happen. There's really no option in terms of the space that it has to occupy. We need to become a very competitive destination where people can actually manufacture and export. And I think that is a key element. The last point, and I think, to that extent, I think your report addresses all of these issues, and we welcome it as a timely addition to the suggestions that the government has before it in order to examine and determine what further policy measures need to be taken. So let me not go beyond that, and let me not, presage what exactly the government would do. But the one area where I think the report could have addressed, or we need to address in the longer term, is to look at why not talk about an India-designed, India-developed mobile phone. And that's an area which I think is not part of what this report has tried to look at. It has looked at the manufacture part, but I think given the kind of design strength that we have in India, and given the kind of capacity that we have in India to make these products, the element of design is something that we can't ignore, and that needs to be an important goal for the mobile industry, that they need to design phones in India, not only for use in India, but for the rest of the world. And that is truly where the value addition takes place. And that's truly where I think more of it would accrue to Indian companies, domestic companies, in terms of the value that they get to retain from that manufacture, and probably if they get to retain more of that value, there would be more research and development. And what is the device of the future is a question that India can also answer along with other countries. But having said that, let me thank BIF for having put together this report and added to this discussion on this very important topic. In the ministry, we will certainly examine its recommendations very closely, all of the recommendations. Some of it, as I mentioned to you already, are being implemented. Some others, there are mechanisms through which we operate and function in terms of coordinating the activities, particularly in the manufacture of mobile phones. We will certainly take note of these recommendations and take it further, and I'm sure you will see that many of these in the days to come have been acted on. Thank you very much for having invited me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for that very encouraging keynote address, and also giving us thoughts for the future, how we should be looking at the India-made, design and developed smartphones. Thank you very much again, once again. With this, now we come to almost to the fag end of our program today. Before we end, I would request our Brigadier Anil Tandon, Director General BIF, to deliver the vote of thanks. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. Distinguished dignitaries on the dais, Secretary Shri Krishnan, Dr. Harshvardhan Singh, former economic advisor, TRAI, World Bank and WTO, Mr. Ricardo Tavares from Google, who's the chair of the BIF Devices Ecosystem Committee, the CONE team of the authors, T.V. Ramachandran, and the distinguished delegates from the government, industry, professional institutions, members from the media, ladies and gentlemen. As we come to the end of this function to mark the release of the BIF report on India's mobile manufacturing ecosystem, challenges and opportunities, it's my honor and privilege to extend a vote of thanks to all our esteemed speakers, guests, dignitaries, friends, and the media. Let me begin by thanking our chief guest, Shri Krishnan. Sir, we wish to thank you for taking time out of your extremely busy schedule. I know you had an event before this, and you've just had to rush from there for us. Thank you very much, sir, to grace this event and releasing the report, as also delivering the keynote address. We've also taken note of what we have missed out in the report, as also thank you very much for saying that you would look at the report, which is timely, and necessary inputs from this would be used for you in your policy formulation. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Many thanks to Dr. Harshvardhan Singh, former economic advisor at TRAI, for taking out time to provide us the detailed insights on the impact and play of tariffs in shaping of government policies in this sector. I'm also grateful to Mr. Ricardo Tavares, Senior Manager, Government Affairs and Public Policy at the Google and Chair of the Broadband India Forum Devices Ecosystem Committee, who has come all the way from the US to be with us this morning. My thanks also to Shri Rajiv Agarwal, who's the Head of Government Affairs at Samsung, and Mr. Kulin of Apple, both of whom are co-chairs of our Ecosystem Committee. Mr. Rajiv, of course, as was brought out, could not come because he had certain engagements in the morning. I also want to take this opportunity to thank other members of the Device Ecosystem Committee of the BIF, other than the chair and the co-chair, for providing their invaluable contribution to making of this report. Last but not the least, I must also thank the team from the CONE Advisory, led by Vivan Sharan, and consisting of Dr. Naveen Bali, Kunal Tyagi, Dhruv Shekhar, and Tamanna Sharma, for helping us stitch this excellent report together with the help of both primary research backed by secondary data. I also wish to thank our media partners, Communication Today, and all members of the BIF Directorate who have worked tirelessly for making this event a success. On that positive note, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to declare this short event to a close and request all of you to join us for lunch. Yeah, before we get into that, request a photo op with all the dignitaries on the dais. Thank you. The rest of you are requested to join us for lunch.